Hello, and welcome to the parent education session entitled The Best of the Incredible Years, or How to Accommodate for Your Child's ADHD at Home. My name is Anne Kerridge, and I'm a social worker with the Outpatient Mental Health Clinic at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario. As a parent, you're naturally concerned about your child. You wonder how they will do in school, you wonder how they will do with their friends, and you're not always sure how to cope with some of the behaviors that they're presenting at home. That's completely normal. The goal of this session is not to cure ADHD, but to help you find strategies that will help your life at home with your child, help your child do his best at home as well, and improve the family functioning as a whole. What we mean by accommodation is that children with ADHD need us to think of parenting in a different way to accommodate for some of their difficult behaviors. We know these children present with more difficult behaviors than other children, and that parents often don't know how to cope with those behaviors. When we accommodate for those behaviors, we find ways of parenting that'll get the best out of your child at home. We know ADHD is not caused by bad parenting. You might think sometimes that you don't know what you're doing at home, and that might be true because parenting kids with ADHD requires a special set of skills to get the best out of them. I would actually say that because you're attending this session today, you are a very, very good parent. For the past 18 years, I've been using the Incredible Years program to help parents of children with ADHD do exactly that, find accommodations to get the best out of their children. The Incredible Years is a program that was developed many, many years ago by Dr. Carolyn Webster Stratton, a fellow Canadian psychologist now based in Seattle, Washington. This program is still the one that we use today because it continues to have the best evidence to support improving the life of children with ADHD at home and helping parents feel confident in their ability to manage their children's behaviors. We still use this program at CHEO. I've led 65 groups for parents of children with ADHD because our own data show many, many improvements after parents participated in their group. Not only do children's defiant symptoms decrease, but also all symptoms of ADHD have a significant decrease as well. Parents' level of confidence improves, as well as their ability to set limits and follow through and stay calm while doing so. What I'm presenting to you today cannot replace the full program. It is a program that runs for 13 sessions at 2 hours a week normally. But I will do my best to give you some of the nuggets that I've gathered over the past 18 years. The nuggets that parents have told me repeatedly were the most helpful for them in terms of improving their child's behavior at home. But before we start with strategies, let's first get on the same page as to what ADHD is. So we have a common definition of the diagnosis. As we know, ADHD is a highly inheritable disorder, which is now considered a neurodevelopmental disorder. That means that we have compelling data about the fact that ADHD affects the brain of children with ADHD and their development. More on this later. First of all, ADHD has 3 major symptoms. The first symptom is inattention. That symptom means that these people have more trouble sustaining focus, persisting on difficult tasks, are disorganized, and these symptoms are not due to defiance or a lack of understanding. The next symptom is hyperactivity. That means that a person has a hard time controlling their motor activity and moves about constantly. They can fidget and squirm. They can constantly interrupt as well. Impulsivity is hasty actions. That means that you say things or do things without thinking about the long-term or short-term consequences first. These actions can have high potential for harm. It also means that you have a desire for immediate rewards and have a hard time delaying gratification, not getting what you want right away. These are cardinal symptoms of kids with ADHD. Another important way to think about ADHD is one proposed by Dr. Russell Barkley, who's been a main researcher in the field of ADHD for the past 30 to 40 years. He thinks of ADHD as a motivational disorder. This explains why some of your children might be able to concentrate for a very long time on things that they're highly motivated in. For example, watching a movie, playing video games, or even getting their things ready for hockey. But when it comes to doing their homework or putting away the dishes, that's more difficult for them. As a parent, it's important to remember this because that means that if we increase their motivation, they will do better. So a lot of what I'll talk about today will be motivational strategies to help your child do better at home. Another thing to remember is that even though kids with ADHD are as smart as any, we have kids who are gifted and who have ADHD. Our brain research shows that there are significant differences in the development of the brains of children with ADHD compared to same-age peers who don't have ADHD. So the shaded areas in the chart next to me indicate areas that are responsible for attention, impulse control, regulation of motor activity, planning and organizing, etc. These areas, as the research shows, can be behind by 3 to 5 years globally. That means that if you have a child who's 10 years old, they can perform as well on their math test as pretty much any 10-year-old. However, when it comes time to study for their math test, they might be more like a 7-year-old in their ability to focus and learn the material. The emotional piggy bank is a tally of how we feel about ourselves and about our experiences and our relationships on a day-to-day basis. If I have a pretty good day, my piggy bank's doing well. I feel competent, confident, and sure of myself. Now, if I have not a great day, I'm feeling pretty bad about myself. I could feel irritated. I could feel a bit sad and confused. Our children with ADHD also have emotional piggy banks. And during the day, at school or at home, they have a lot of negative experiences that come their way. Either teachers telling them to pay attention, other children having arguments with them, or even having to do their homework. At home can be the same thing, arguments with siblings, etc. Kids with ADHD in general have days that are difficult for them, and their piggy bank can be pretty empty by the end of the day or even by the time they get home. This means that if we improve the piggy bank, their mood will improve and their ability to do well will as well. The other thing to consider is that an emotional piggy bank is also relational. This means that we can feel good in a relationship with a person. If we have many encounters with a person that are negative in focus, then our relationship with that person is a pretty empty piggy bank. As parents, it's important to think of that. We need to outweigh the positive involvement with our child versus the negative involvement with our child. Another thing to remember about negative experiences is that our brain tends to focus on the negative more quickly. If I have a good day, but only one bad thing happens at work or at home, what am I thinking about when I get to bed that night? That one bad thing. This is how our brain is made, and it's completely natural. Our children are the same. It's helpful to consider their emotional piggy bank, take stock of it, in order for them to feel better about themselves and do better in every environment. So we'll talk a little bit more about the emotional piggy bank and how to fill it up a little bit more further on. Next, let me introduce you to the Incredible Years Parenting Pyramid. As you can see, there's a strong foundation at the bottom of the pyramid to address filling up the piggy bank with play, problem solving, empathy, listening, and attention. This improves the child and parent attachment and their willingness to collaborate with us. The next tier of the pyramid has praise and coaching and rewards in it. These are motivational strategies that help improve behavior as well as learn new behaviors. Then the pyramid moves up to how to set clear limits. This is crucial for kids with ADHD to know exactly what the limits are and know that they're going to be followed through consistently. This improves predictability, reduces insecurity, and helps them know what to expect. It also reduces testing of limits, because if they're consistent, they tend to test less. Going up the pyramid is ignoring. This is really important for kids with ADHD. They engage in a lot of mild, negative, annoying misbehaviors that are attention-seeking in nature. If we ignore them, they will tend to go away. Finally, to be used sparingly, we have consequences. Some of the consequences include timeout for settling down and calming self, and or other natural or logical consequences, and should be used sparingly because they empty the piggy bank. We'll go through each of these topics separately in the next few moments. Often parents come to me, and by the time they get there, their pyramid is kind of upside down, and they're usually asking me about consequences because they're saying their consequences that they're using don't work anymore. That's probably because the pyramid is upside down. We look at improving the pyramid, improving the bottom layers of the pyramid, and the need for consequences tends to decrease, as well as their effectiveness tends to improve. I just want to note that this program is designed for all children, and mostly for children who have behavior problems and ADHD, but can be used with any of your child's siblings and show improvements in their behavior as well. As I said earlier, what I'm going to present to you is only a short excerpt of the full program. If you want more information about the program, if you want to learn more in depth, I encourage you to purchase the Incredible Years book. You can find it on Amazon, through the website, and even an audiobook version on Audible. So let's start with the bottom of the pyramid. Strategies to fill up the piggy bank and start changing behaviors. We focus on the topic of play. Play is an important way to fill up a piggy bank because you join your children in their world. But it's not always easy to make it positive. If the play ends up having difficult moments, or you need to use redirection, or the child's behavior gets out of hand, then it empties everybody's piggy bank. The goal of the play sessions are to improve the piggy bank and improve the relationship. How do we do that? First of all, play needs to be frequent and short. Remember, piggy banks fill up quickly but empty out really quickly. It's better to play 10 to 15 minutes a day, that's all, than to play for 2 hours on the weekend. It's also important for the play to be predictable. Daily play is important. It assures the child that they'll get some attention, positive attention. They'll get some piggy bank filling happening every day. They value that time with you. It's also preferable, at the beginning at least, to play with only one child at a time. If you have other siblings around, there can be conflicts and distractions, and everyone's play can be disrupted in that fashion. It's important then to play with each child for a few minutes at a time instead of playing with many children at once. Once you get the hang of it, it can be possible to play with 1, 2, or 3 children at the same time and fill up all 3 emotional piggy banks. It's also important to have your child take the lead in the play. Avoid taking over or controlling the play. One huge tip is that most kids enjoy just us watching them play. Our eyes are enough for them. How often do they say, "Mom, Dad, look what I can do. Look at my cartwheel." That happens so frequently. It tells us that they really love us watching and being an appreciative audience of their play. Another way to keep the play positive is to choose the games you play wisely. Some games go better than others. Usually the games that do best for this kind of piggy bank filling activity are games that have less rules or games that are non-competitive. I'm thinking about playing hide and go seek, kicking a ball around, playing Legos, arts and crafts, that kind of stuff. Next, it's important that you be free of other goals while you're playing with your children. The only goal is to have fun and keep the play positive. Avoid redirecting or teaching or criticizing. You can do that at every other part of the day. While you're playing your 10 to 15 minutes, your only goal is to have fun and enjoy being with them, and them enjoy being with you. So have fun. So next we'll talk about praise. Now, praise is actually the strategy that parents tell me is the most effective for children with ADHD in terms of improving their behavior. Praise is based on something called the attention principle. The attention principle means that behavior that is given attention will tend to increase, whereas behavior that we ignore will tend to decrease. As parents, our brains tell us to pay attention to negative behavior. Johnny is more likely to get attention for hitting his sister over the head than for playing with his sister nicely. This means that children quickly learn how to get attention from their parents. It's almost guaranteed. Whereas when they behave nicely, they're less likely to get attention for their behavior. Praise turns this around. The goal of praise is to increase the amount of praise you give your children during the day, to improve their willingness to perform that desired behavior. If you praise them for walking down the stairs, they're more likely to walk down the stairs the next time instead of running. How do you make this praise effective? Praise should be specific. A child with ADHD needs to know what the behavior was that was appreciated. They lack the ability to infer that from the moment. Saying, "Good job," is lovely, but saying, "Good job for helping your sister with her project," is even better. Praise should be used frequently, as I said before. As we know, our brain tends to notice negative interactions more. So that praise needs to outweigh the negative about 5 to 1. If you can maintain a 5 to 1 ratio of praise versus criticism or limit setting, your child's piggy bank will naturally improve, and they will focus more on getting praise than on getting attention through negative behavior. Now, praise is effective as well if you use positive statements to praise. Instead of saying, "Thanks for not running," saying, "Thanks for walking," is more effective, as it tells the child what they did exactly that warranted that praise and helps them create a roadmap for positive behavior. Kids with ADHD also struggle with non-compliance issue. Their impulsivity gets in the way of saying, "Sure, Mom, I'll empty the dishwasher." So it's really important for children with ADHD to hear that they can comply. Therefore, if you find every opportunity to praise them for compliance, even for small things such as passing you the salt when asked, then they learn that they can comply and that they will get attention for complying. So praising for compliance is essential to improve compliance issues. And finally, praise should not be saved for the perfect behavior or achieving results. It should be given freely while a child is trying to achieve their goal. Things like praising morning routines at the beginning of the morning routine. If a child goes to get dressed, for example, saying, "Wow, you've got your socks on, that's wonderful." And then, "Hey, you've also got your shoes on, that's great," is much better than waiting till they're fully dressed to give them praise, because that might not happen. So you motivate your children to continue their positive behavior by using praise. This can be weaned off later on, but it's really effective to help them learn a new behavior rather than wait till the end of the behavior to praise. Now we'll talk about reward programs. Many parents actually groan when I talk about reward programs. They've tried them and they've not always been successful with them. So we'll talk about how to make them more successful. Russell Barkley, the bigwig I was telling you about earlier, believes that all children with ADHD should be on a reward program at all times. They're very useful to learn new or difficult behaviors, behaviors that you just wouldn't see often enough to use praise with. Things like remembering to bring everything home from school, for example, to do their homework, or even morning routines or evening routines. Rewards can be very helpful. Actually, many of my reward programs that I've used with my families have been focused on brushing teeth. Children with ADHD seem to have a universal dislike of brushing their teeth. It seems the most boring task in the world to them. A simple reward program can often be very effective just to improve that behavior. So we're going to be looking at simple and effective reward programs. Usually, a simple reward program will only have 1 or 2 behaviors at most. The target behavior should be a behavior that you want to see, not one you don't want to see. So something observable, something like brushing teeth, sharing toys, or using their calming strategies if you're wanting to improve their emotional management skills. But more on that a little bit later. The next important thing to consider is the reward itself. Kids with ADHD get bored of the same rewards. Remember, kids with ADHD have a hard time waiting and delaying gratification. So it's important to reward them frequently. It can be many times a day for young children with ADHD or once a day for older children. Avoid having them perform many days before getting their reward. This is why it's important to focus on small, inexpensive reward. The most effective one we've found to date, though, has been one single Tic Tac. Children seem to love Tic Tacs. You can buy them in bulk, and you can always have them on hand. They're very easy and motivating for children. Another pitfall that we end up in with reward programs is that parents tend to take away a reward for an unrelated negative behavior. That's counterproductive, as it becomes unmotivating for the child with ADHD to continue working on their goal if they think that their reward will be taken away. Resist the urge to take away the reward as a consequence. A reward earned is a reward kept. Now, how do we wean them off this reward program? Well, I recommend that you keep on going with the reward program for at least 2-3 weeks. During this time, when your child achieves a reward, then it's important that you praise them as much as possible while you're giving the reward. The social approval will help them feel good about themselves, good about their relationship, and eventually replace the need for the reward as you maintain it with praise itself. Next on the pyramid, you see something called coaching. We're going to talk about how to be coaches to help your children manage their emotions. Many attempts to help children with ADHD manage their emotions have been tried over the years. There have been groups for kids to help them learn to manage their emotions, and also individual therapy. We found that those interventions are not very effective. Children with ADHD tend to forget what they've learned as soon as they get back out into the real world. What they benefit from more is online direct coaching of their efforts while they're happening. An important point I want to make about emotional management before we talk about how to help your children learn to manage their emotions is the concept of catharsis. Now, catharsis, you might not know what this means, the word means, but it's simple. It just means getting rid of your emotion. Often, we think that children with ADHD or with high emotions need to get their feelings out by punching pillows or screaming or scribbling their angry feelings out. We used to think that that was an effective way to manage emotions, and that was called catharsis. Now, we found that actually does not improve children's ability or adults' ability to manage their emotions. Pillows aren't always there, and externalizing our emotions isn't necessarily the best thing to do at any given moment. The idea of managing emotions is just that, keeping your emotions at a manageable level so they don't spill over and lead to negative consequences for yourself or others. What we now know is that children learn self-regulation through co-regulation. It's by having their emotions validated and understood by another person. A regulated brain helps them learn to regulate their own emotions, help them learn that their emotions are okay and acceptable and manageable. As parents, you play a crucial role in this, of course. The first thing that you'll do is help them with identifying emotions. You can do this by labeling their emotions, naming the emotion that you see. Saying, "You look sad. That must be disappointing," when that happens. When children display anger, we often think they are angry. They might look angry. But anger is the tip of the iceberg very often. It's a behavior that demonstrates many other feelings. It can be anger, but it can also be fear. It can be shame, guilt, or it can be feeling hurt. So then, as a parent, it would be important to help your child know that you see the emotion underneath. If their sibling just called them a name and they react by lashing out angrily, showing empathy and validation by saying, "Hey, it's not okay to hit your brother, and I know you were really feeling hurt right now because he said that." That would help your child learn that he's understood and accepted, but not his behavior, but his emotions are. We naturally see it when our children are dysregulated. However, they do try to stay calm, and sometimes they are calm. It's therefore really crucial that you praise every attempt to stay calm. For example, if you're playing a game that's frustrating for them and they're staying calm despite being frustrated, saying, hey, I see you're frustrated and you're staying calm. You can teach them things like breathing from their belly, which we know helps them feel calm, helps everybody feel calmer. And then if you see them taking deep breaths, saying, wow, you've taken a big deep breath. I like it when you do that because it helps you stay calm. So praising every attempt to stay calm will help your children learn what to do to stay calm. So that's what a good coach is. They stay on the sidelines and say great pass or great hustle, and then they applaud every chance the child has to become a good hockey player. The same is for emotional coaching. These children haven't learned to regulate their emotions yet. So you're on the sidelines, naming the emotion and praising their attempts to stay calm. Moving up the pyramid to the next tier of the pyramid is clear limit setting. It's a whole rung in and of itself. It's one of the most crucial strategies for kids with ADHD. Having clear limits set for them helps them know the structure of the day, helps them feel that things are predictable, and also helps reduce limit testing. If they know what to expect and it's repetitive and consistent, they will learn that that is how things work. Did you know, however, that parents can set up to 17 limits in 30 minutes? That's a lot. It's hard for you and for the child. It's hard for you to follow through on 17 commands. And many of those are repeated commands. So when you don't follow through, or when you repeat a command, you're just showing your child that they don't have to listen the first time. So being consistent and choosing your limits carefully is very important because you'll want to follow through on your limits. Reducing commands might help you be able to set more structure rather than less in your house. So to reduce commands, it might be good to just think, is this important right now? Am I ready and willing to follow through on this? Or should I just wait a little bit? Next, we'll talk about how to make those commands effective. It might be tempting to tell a child to come to dinner from the other room. What likely usually happens is that you have to go to the child anyway. So to increase their motivation to listen to you, going to them directly and looking at them while giving a command is more effective. They think, okay, mom or dad means business. You might want to have eye contact or physical contact, but don't force it. Get their eyes. Lean over and go get their eyes while you're giving them that command. That shows that you also mean business. For kids with ADHD in particular, commands need to be short. They only involve the reason for the command, like we're going to be eating soon, and then the command itself. Please put your toys away, for example. These commands should be stated in a friendly tone and can be polite. Avoid asking questions as a command. Many parents do this, and it's one of the hardest habits to break. Instead of saying, please put your toys away, parents will say, can you please put your toys away? That involves a choice. And most kids with ADHD will take the choice to say, no, I don't want to put my toys away. Try it out for a week and see the impact of using direct commands rather than question commands with your children. Once you've stated your command, wait. Children need time to process the command as well as what's expected of them and what they want to do about it. Kids with ADHD might need up to 10 seconds of you waiting for them to respond to your command. Avoid repeating your command or getting angry before the 10 seconds are up. You'll find that they might say, I don't want to do it, but then start doing it anyways. Often, this strategy, waiting 10 seconds, can reduce non-compliance by up to 50%, parents report. It's one of the most important strategies that we have discovered so far. A when-then command implies that once they've done what you've asked them to do, then there's a positive result to that. For example, when you've put the trash out, then you can go play ball at the park with your friends. There's a positive outcome to their behavior. That's motivating for them in and of itself. Many children with ADHD also have a hard time transitioning between activities. And parents use warnings, which is great. Now we found that using timed warnings for kids with ADHD, such as in 5 minutes, we're going to turn off the computer, are less effective than finding natural transition points. A natural transition point is one that would occur naturally. For example, if a child is playing on the computer, it could be once the game is over or the next time you can save. That's a natural point for a child to transition out of. If they're playing Lego, you can determine a certain number of blocks. If they're coloring, you can determine when they'll be finished coloring a portion of their coloring, for example. So finding natural transition points rather than stopping something right in the middle. We're actually pretty much the same. We'd like to finish our page or finish our sentence. So it's very respectful to do that and easier for children with ADHD to transition when they've reached a natural transition point. It's important to stay there, however. If you give them a natural transition point and you move away, the motivation to listen to you has gone with you, and they'll keep on going. You've probably experienced this many times before. So stick around and make sure you follow up with the deal that you made around the natural transition. So we're getting to the top of the pyramid here because we're going to talk about ignoring. Ignoring should not be started until the piggy bank is doing pretty well. Ignoring really can take away from the piggy bank. It's essential to use, though, eventually. A lot of our children with ADHD have behaviors that are mild, annoying misbehaviors, such as making noises, bouncing around, or argumentative behaviors. Based on the attention principle that I mentioned before, if we give these behaviors attention, guess what's going to happen? There's going to be more of them. So those behaviors are important to not give attention to, mostly when they're milder, such as the behaviors I mentioned earlier. You might even want to use this technique for more difficult behaviors, even behaviors you think you should not ignore, such as swearing or tantruming. The fact is, your children most likely know that they're not allowed to swear, for example. And by repeating to them that they're not allowed to swear, you're actually giving attention to that swearing behavior. If you use the ignore technique for swearing, there's a likely chance that this will decrease significantly in the next few weeks while you're trying to do this. For most negative behavior, you can still start with empathizing and with redirecting, saying something like, "Oh, you have lots of energy today. Why don't you go try jumping on the trampoline?" Instead of right away ignoring the jumpy or hyperactive behavior might be more useful. If that fails, however, you turn your attention away until that misbehavior stops. Usually, I have to warn you, for children, when you start using this technique, for children who have not been ignored, who've had a lot of attention for misbehavior, their misbehavior will likely increase in an attempt to get your attention again. That's perfectly normal and to be expected. So keep with it, stay calm, more on this in a few seconds, and ignore. Avoid eye contact, turn your body away, and refrain from non-verbal negative reactions, such as frowning or obviously tensing up. For this strategy to work, it's really important that your child understands that Negative behavior will be ignored and positive behavior will be attended to. Therefore, once your child's negative behavior has stopped, return your attention as soon as possible and re-engage in a positive way with your child, with no reminders of his or her past negative behavior. Just re-engage in normal, positive day-to-day life. Okay, now you're wondering, how do I stay calm while this misbehavior gets worse? And that's a really good question. Parents learn to stay calm the same way as we teach children to stay calm. Remember, they only learn self-regulation through your co-regulation with them. We know that there are two main strategies to help people stay calm. One is to calm their nervous system. And the way you do that is by doing this deep belly breathing that I mentioned before that you could teach your children. When you take those deep breaths, you're really returning your body to a baseline state. It's the state that we use to fall asleep in. When we get angry or upset, our breath naturally becomes more shallow and rapid. So forcing your breath to be deeper and longer will counteract that excitatory effect of that activation because of the high emotions. So that's one way. The other way to stay calm is to control your thoughts. When a child acts up, it's quite natural for a parent to think, oh, not again, or why is this happening, or I can't stand this. If you do that, you're closer to getting upset. Whereas if you think something different, such as, my child's having a really hard time right now, and if I ignore or stay calm, I'll be in a better place to manage this behavior. Not everybody can do this easily right away. I then encourage parents to develop a practice of deep breathing on a daily basis. There's a really good app called Breathe to Relax, for example, or to even practice mindfulness meditation, which are both shown to improve over time your ability to stay calm. Finally, we've reached the top of the pyramid. By the time you implement this, the misbehavior should be drastically reduced. Consequences might be needed for behaviors that you can't ignore successfully. Behaviors such as aggression or blatant non-compliance. What we mean by blatant non-compliance is giving a command and that your child immediately disobeys. If a child disobeys, you can't ignore that. So this is a way to follow through on your commands. One of the strategies we use is a timeout. We also call it a calm down time because it gives the child a chance to reset and go back to baseline when they're too hyperactive or emotionally dysregulated and they've done a behavior that you wouldn't be able to ignore. Timeout can be effective for children starting at age 3. I know lots of you have tried those timeouts before. They're not easy to apply. And I will give you a simple way to help children learn that timeout is a good way for them to be able to gain control of themselves. So first, timeout should never happen in their bedroom. Timeout should be in a place where you can supervise, close to the family, but away from major distractions. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a place that's uncomfortable for the child. It can be in a soft chair, a bean bag. They can have a stuffed animal with them, anything that helps them calm down. You should tolerate some fidgetiness as well during timeout. Timeout should not be more than 5 minutes. A timeout that's 2 to 5 minutes long, as long as your child is quiet for at least 1 minute at the end of timeout before they come out. Now, if they're still upset and disruptive after 5 minutes, then they need to stay there until they're quiet for 1 minute. You can give one warning for timeout, except for aggression. For example, if you say, Tommy, please pick up your coat and hang it up. And you wait 10 seconds and Tommy still doesn't pick up his coat. You can say, Tommy, if you don't pick up your coat, then you'll have to go for a timeout. Then you wait another 10 seconds. If Tommy doesn't pick up his coat, he goes to timeout. However, if Tommy picks up his coat, you praise him for picking up his coat, of course. Thank you for picking up your coat, Tommy. I love when you do that. You shouldn't give a warning, though, for behaviors such as aggression. So, aggressive behavior will result in immediate timeout. You might want to explain timeout to your children ahead of time, mostly if they're not going to get a warning. And you can explain to them that where timeout will be and how long it will last. You can even have them practice doing a timeout to help them with understanding that this is something that can be useful for them to calm down and reset. What if your child doesn't want to go to timeout, is running around the kitchen table? What do you do then? So what you should do is use a backup consequence. For example, Tommy, if you don't go to timeout, then you'll lose your computer privileges for tonight. And then wait 10 seconds. If Tommy goes to timeout, then he does his 5 minutes. But if he doesn't, then you'll say, Tommy, you don't have to go to timeout, but you've lost your computer privileges for tonight. The next day, when you need to use a timeout with Tommy, he might, at that point, consider the option between timeout and losing a privilege. Kids need sometimes more than one attempt to do this. But my experience has been that if parents implement the Incredible Years program from the bottom up and take their time doing so, the children actually do go to timeout and do not require backup consequences. Finally, sometimes timeout is not an appropriate consequence for a certain behavior. Sometimes we need consequences that will help our children learn life lessons or for behaviors that just don't occur very frequently. We talked then about natural or logical consequences. Now, what's the difference between a natural and a logical consequence? Well, the beauty of a natural consequence is that as a parent, you have to do nothing. When a child doesn't wear his snow pants to go to school, then he might now be able to play at recess with his friends. That's a natural consequence. A logical consequence is a consequence that makes sense with the behavior. So for example, if a child doesn't brush his teeth, he might not be able to have dessert, a sweet dessert that night. That makes sense with the behavior. These types of consequences should be short and to the point. People need many learning trials to learn a new behavior. Actually, we need 40 to 200 learning trials. If we give long consequences that last a day or 2 or 3, then that's only one learning experience. Whereas if we give frequent but small consequences, children learn that way. Long consequences too, they tend to forget what the consequence was about, and then you end up having no consequences to give if you need another one. So short, to the point consequences are better than long consequences. An example would be for a young child. If they color on the wall, then the crayons are taken away for 15 minutes only. And then they're given a paper and the crayons again with the explicit rules, and they get to try again. That way they'll learn that coloring on the walls is not acceptable. Many repeated learning trials are more effective than just one long consequences. So that's it for the program. I hope you found this helpful and have ideas on starting to make changes today to improve life at home for yourself and your child with ADHD, as well as his or her siblings. Start with the bottom of the pyramid. I encourage you to go slow, and you do it 1 week at a time. Purchase the book if you want to have more in-depth learning and more ideas and suggestions about how to implement this program with your child with ADHD. The goal is to have these strategies become your day-to-day practice with your child.